I'm Director of AI at JISC, and I'm going to give you a whistle-stop tour of some of the things that I think we should take into account when thinking about AI and smart and intelligent campuses. And I'm going to do that through the lens of our AI maturity models. This is something we created in JISC about 3 or 4 years ago to guide discussion about where you were on your journey through AI. I'm going to start with a really quick whiz through where I think we see things happening with AI in general in universities and colleges, and then home in on some things that I think are particularly relevant for smart campuses. So it's always good to start off by making sure we know where we are when we're talking about AI. There's been a huge amount of hype about generative AI, and there's a danger of just thinking about generative AI. So traditional AI, been with us for decades, more and more mature, does lots of useful things for us. Generative AI creates new images. And I'm going to talk about a mixture of both of those things today. And generative AI itself is way more than ChatGPT. It's getting increasingly diverse in the kind of stuff it can do. You'll now know, for example, in the search space that Google starts answering with a generative AI summary of your work. Image generation and voice generation, I'm going to show you some of that in a moment. It's becoming increasingly sophisticated. Lots of writing tools and all sorts of content creation tools that we can use in our everyday work to do things more efficiently. There's perhaps a kind of vague feeling that actually there's a lot of hype here and not a lot of substance. But we're finding that generative AI tools in particular really are leading to time saving. So this is Teachermatic, as we piloted this in 8 colleges and 8 universities. It's more suited to FE, I'll be honest, than HE, because that's where it came from. We gave it to 50 staff in each institution, and after a few months got them to report back on the time saving. So it does common tasks that teachers do, like lesson plans, all of that kind of stuff. And the average we got back was about 3 hours time saving. And perhaps that doesn't sound much, but it's quite substantial. And as an average, that meant that some people were reporting it was saving 6-7 hours a week, depending on where they were with their work life cycle, and giving them their weekend back, in the words of some of them. So there really is opportunity here for personal productivity saving. So there I've got my nice lesson plan with nice adjustments for my students with dyslexia and ASD, for example. We've done a lot of work talking to students to find out where they are. So my colleague Sue has travelled around the country, done focus groups with students. We did some fairly early on in the life cycle of generative AI and some more recently. And it won't surprise you, I guess, that students are using AI in increasingly sophisticated ways. And I think that probably impacts on what they expect of the services provided to them. So, yeah, some of them do just use it as a cheating mechanism. We know that, okay? And we know that because we hear that people mark it says halfway through as a generative AI tool, I cannot touch a rock, but here's my description, etc. But increasingly, they use it in all sorts of sophisticated ways. So, as a tool to discuss, interact the topic that they're interested in, safe proofreading, so something that's previously not been evenly distributed in terms of opportunities, very much depends on family, getting feedback, focus efficiency, all sorts of good stuff. And you might think, well, why on earth are they using these tools? Why would you talk to a generative AI tool about your topic when you know it can make mistakes? And the students know it can. But it's infinitely patient, best will in the world. Tutors only got so much patience to be asked the same question. It's brilliant at simplifying, explaining things, tell me it like I'm a 5-year-old. Again, best will in the world. Students say that perhaps some of the lecturers aren't the best at doing that. Yeah. Yeah. So somebody knows one of those. Changing the voice, particularly neurodiverse students report they find this quite often. Discussing the content. Yeah, you can be reading a research paper and it can be really quite hard to get to grips with some of these. They're not the easiest things to read a lot of the time. Chatting about it makes it much more accessible. Always there in efficiency. And again, these are much more general things. So the students say to us, look, we've got really, really busy lives. We've got second jobs, some of us. You might talk about efficiency for staff, but it was really, really important to us too. On the plus side, on the downside, all sorts of other threats. So we talked a little bit about the security stuff earlier on today. So I cloned my voice. It took me about 1.5 minutes to do and cost me £1. And I played it to my colleagues, and they said, yeah, it sounds like you, Michael, but posher. So that's fair enough. So example here, we all do lots of phishing tests. I was at our staff conference yesterday, and I asked, I think there were about 700 in the room, I said, how many fell for it? And about 3 people put their hand up. Now, I fell for it and had to go on the training, and there are a lot more than that. So people don't like admitting it. But anyway, let's...
Hi there, this is Michael from IT. I know you've done your phishing training and know not to click unknown links, so I'm just giving you a quick call to say that the one you've just got really is from me, and it's fine to click and enter your details. Cheers.
Okay, yeah, so it does sound like me, but posher, doesn't it? You might think no one's going to fall for things like that. Well, they are. A company transferred about £20 million pounds or dollars, I can't remember which, out of the UK to an overseas criminal gang and a scam just like that, okay? So these kind of threats are real, and we need to adjust our processes to make people aware of these kind of things. So a lot of the work that we've done over the last 2 years really has been heavily focused on learning and teaching, but we're now seeing a lot more interest on it, shifting to professional and technical services and how AI can be used there. From our model perspective, most institutions are moving from an experimenting stage to thinking, how do we operationalize this? How do we embed it? And I just want to walk through the model very briefly and just give some thoughts that are particularly relevant to smart, intelligent campuses. So our starting phase is around interested in AI, understanding how it's impacted our sector, but also other sectors as well. So what interesting things are happening? And the great thing about working in AI at the moment is that you get invited to talk to all sorts of different audiences. One thing we always do is then get someone in the team to do a bit of research to find out what interesting stuff's happening in those kind of areas. So we had a look around adjacent uses of AI, so smart cities in particular and things like that. What we found was there was an awful lot of hype, an awful lot of press releases, and quite hard to get to some of the substance. But we found a couple of bits that were interesting. So we were intrigued on how AI is used to manage large-scale infrastructure. So there are tools out there, Grid Vision, which basically uses drones to look at the national grid, uses AI to look at the pictures to figure out what's happening and see whether there's any maintenance issue. So I'm not suggesting you immediately all go and get drones to fly around your campus, but I think it will become the norm over the next few years for that sort of thing. Viva City, I found this one quite interesting. It's a tool for looking at traffic and to identify near misses. So we've got loads of data on things that are actual crashes, but actually identifying potential danger areas is much harder. AI spotting them, so quite nice. And some more morally complex areas. So you may have heard of Clearview, in the news a lot, scraped billions of pictures off the internet, used to identify criminal activity and similar things. They got hacked a couple of years ago, so their customer base became public. Met Office were one of them. Used in Ukraine to identify bodies and potential Russian infiltrators and things like that. So, you know, just be aware of things like that. Experimenting, exploring stage, doing pilots, getting a responsible data culture. So we heard in the last session about the importance of getting your data right, and getting responsible AI practices established. I'm not suggesting that you're all going to deploy Clearview, but you know that's an extreme example of why you need responsible practices. On a practical note, something we're doing here. So we heard about the Copilot in the last session. We're piloting a simple tool to point at your data and allow students to chat to it. LearnWise at the moment, so we'll share how that goes. And can't avoid talking about AI and the environment. And this is complicated. And I'm just going to go through some random figures. Now, there's an awful lot of misinformation in this, okay? So, and it's really hard to pull some of the detail, but these are some of the kind of figures that are pulled out. So first of all, it's quite hard to figure out what compute use is actually for AI against other uses. So the top one just assumed that the heavy processing stuff was AI and crypto, and said that we might use the whole of, same as the whole of Japan in a few years' time. The water is more easily measurable. Massive increase in water usage around the time GPT-4 was trained in the data centers Microsoft used. Estimates about it taking up half the amount that we already use in the UK. So lots of bad stuff there. On the other side, it gets a bit more complex. So there's been some studies, and there's some contentiousness about this, that the emissions for doing things like AI writing in image generation actually uses less power than humans because it does it quicker and more efficiently. Yeah? Humans, us sat there with heating on, drinking 7 cups of coffee and things like that uses power. And it's being used to solve all sorts of environmental problems. 2 minutes left. Let's go through these quickly. I'm nearly there. Operational. So at this stage, you've got principles established. It's embedded in your, you've got everyday AI used across the institution, so the time-saving stuff that I talked about becomes across the institution, and you're using AI for task-specific stuff. I can never say that word. I should take it out of the presentation. Call to action here is all institutions should give clear guidance to staff. We speak to so many who just don't think they're allowed to use AI. Make sure your policies are reviewed, but focus on clear guidance. And think about what you actually want to automate. Yeah? So think about what takes time and what you're open to automating and what you want to remain a human task. Don't just wait for the technology to come. At the embedded stage, it's in your strategy. Your data maturity is such that you can use AI for anything, and you've got mature processes for the life cycle of it. Think about what's different of the life cycle of AI and normal IT, and it's the fact that it's not a deterministic system. So traditional system, same input, always gives the same output. AI, that's not the case. The model will vary based on the data as it gets matured. So get procurement processes in place with specific AI questions. Find out about the third-party tools that you use so you can model the supply chain. How is performance defined and measured so you can get processes to make sure that they continue working. Think about how you're going to minimize bias and ask questions. How's data used, and many more. So we've got a blog post on this, but really now's the time to start embedding AI questions in your procurement process. And finally, optimize to transform. Where are you going? Most institutions, in reality, are optimizing, not transforming. And I think we're not honest enough about this enough. Most of us will still be delivering the same kind of courses to the same kind of students in the next 10, 20, whatever years. So our focus is on optimizing the process. We frame that as supporting the delivery that optimizes opportunities and outcomes for all learners or students, and the right tasks automated. So, think about what that looks like in practice. That is me today. So thank you, and I think we've probably got time for a couple of questions maybe. Any questions? I know I'm between everyone and lunch, so.
What are the main trends you're seeing then in higher education in terms of application of AI from, say, IT departments and so on?
Yeah. So I suppose it's difficult to define it as a trend. What we find is, at the moment, and this is what we need to move away from, lots of individuals figuring out how to use generative AI well in their specific task and not necessarily spreading that practice. And I get this all the time. People come up to me and say, hey, I'm using it to do this. It's speeding up process X brilliantly for me. But it's not institution-wide. And it's something, we're the same internally in JISC. So we're looking at setting up, essentially, community of practice events of people that take a similar job role to share that kind of expertise. So I think that's probably the kind of where I see most people at the moment, and that's across all parts of institutions. In that case, you can all have your lunch. Thank you for listening.